Quorum present. Gloria Russo is unable to attend today, so I'll be chairing the meeting. My name is Jim Bagg. So first thing on the agenda is the minutes of June 2012.
I've read them and satisfactory.
Anybody else? Any other comment?
I'm going to abstain. I did not read it. The computer would not open up.
Motion?
I make a motion to approve them.
Second.
All right, vote.
Abstain.
In favor? Abstain? Okay, minutes are approved. Correspondence? Michael?
We did get a letter from, was that from VHB? Richard, do you want to touch on that, dealing with the...
Yes, I received a letter in my office from this consulting group asking if we had any, if my office had any comments relating to them applying to New York State to obtain clearance from the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation to go forward with this project, which is the installation of the cell phone tower at the Vanderbilt Museum. I brought it to Mike's attention. I thought it should be discussed here. I think the comments should come from the CEQ, the full CEQ, and Mike reminded me that they have not completed all the items that the CEQ requested in the past at this point.
This is just one of the, 5 items we requested.
Jim?
Yeah.
I read the minutes recently of the Vanderbilt trustees meeting. First off, Noel Gish, from what I understand, has resigned as the chairperson subsequent to our meeting. The minutes themselves very clearly indicate that they wanted to try and further pursue this, I guess because of the economic climate and some safety concerns. So I guess this is part and parcel of what they're trying to do. They're still going to pursue it until a determination is made one way or the other. It was curious in reading the minutes that they did not really look at the impacts upon the historic aspect of the property. That's just a theme that I've been seeing. So it is what it is. You know, when they finish their procedures and come back to us, I guess we'll have to make a judgment call on all of this. But I just want to let you know what was going on.
I'm just, what Mike just said, should we say you're not addressing historic concerns and the National Register status enough in your review, or obviously will the state also take care of that?
Well, basically the county's lead agency. And we're just looking to find out what are the implications of the impacts on a historic property.
Are we lead? Or is it the Vandy doing
Oh,
it?
the Vanderbilt Museum, excuse me, the Vanderbilt Museum is. However, the state can't sign off until SECRA is complete. They could not, grant approval. They could say, well, we have certain reservations, or we find the project is compatible with the site, or something. We think it's compatible with the site and have no further things. But technically, they shouldn't be allowed to sign off until SECRA is complete.
SHPO, you mean?
SHPO, you're right.
Yeah, that may be worth a letter, just to remind them of the proper procedures under SECRA.
I have a problem. Here, this letter says the proposed concealment pole. What does that mean?
It's just the monopole with the antennas concealed inside of it, so you're not going to have these
arrays so
sticking
they're
out.
going with a single pole.
Yeah. By the way, just to let you know, if anyone's been following the wireless news, there have been some applications by one of the cell tower companies, I think it's Crown, but I won't swear to it, where they're putting smaller utility cabinets, if you will, on telephone poles and simply making the chain smaller. Instead of having a monopole that has a range of, say, 5 miles or something like that, these cabinets that they put onto the poles are generally, say, a quarter of a mile or a half a mile range, line of sight. They're much less obtrusive. They don't need the height. They cover smaller areas, so you need more of them. that's the way the communications companies are realizing they have to deal with a lot of the villages that are into keeping their rural beauty going forward. What that boils down to is, for me at least, if they're talking about a question of health, safety, and welfare for people on the Vanderbilt Museum property, do they need a monopole? Can they go with the alternative technologies, which some people swear don't exist? So, that's a question maybe that SHPO should be addressing at some time, just raising it. There are alternative technologies out there.
On our list of things that we requested, Michael, I mean, they did hold a public meeting, is that right?
They did.
And did we get copies of the
We have
transcripts?
the transcripts, yep.
And what was the upshot of that?
Lynch mob.
There was a lot of opposition, but there was also some support.
What about any input on environmental impact and pursuing an EIS? I think the CEQ said that this should have an EIS, didn't we, in the past, or no?
We didn't pause decade.
We never got that far.
We tabled it until we had more information.
Yeah, the meeting went all over the place. I attended, Rich attended, Mike attended also. A lot of people were concerned about the monopol's impact on surrounding properties. A lot of people were concerned about the monopole impact upon the museum itself as being out of character. There was some discussion of the environmental impacts.
A lot of discussion on the health impacts.
Yeah.
Has the environmental assessment been revised to...
We haven't seen anything since that first meeting, besides the public hearing.
I mean, in addition, what was sent with this particular letter to the state? I mean, has a revised EAF been sent to the state?
That I don't know. Richard's the one that got this.
Yeah, I just got this letter, that's all I know.
I mean, technically, under correct procedure, they should have sent the state the revised EAF with the, alternatives on it and the visual simulation, so the state can then have something to make a determination with. Just don't send them a letter and say, well, we want a concealment pole on the site, and the state not know where it's going to go.
Should we be contacting the consultant, or should we be contacting SHPO?
SHPO.
Okay, writing a letter to SHPO and say these things are what have occurred, and this is all the evidence we have for you to consider.
Yeah.
And let the state know that we're not sure whether they've gotten this information.
I would support that, Jim. This is a sensitive situation from the historic side of things. I well recognize the economic aspect of it, and this is going to be one of the tougher decisions we make. We really should cover the bases. And this is one of the highest scrutiny projects I can see from the historic side of things. I would agree with Rich that a letter should go out from his office or from us stating, please consider these issues.
I think I would agree. We should probably take a pretty hard line, because basically I think what they're trying to do is get approval by letting it just go quiet for a year and a half, and hopefully we will have forgotten what we requested. And I would also submit that the public meeting which we requested and they held is now so outdated that they should have another public meeting.
Yeah. They did talk about that once.
Did we receive a summary on that meeting?
We have the transcript of the second meeting that they held.
I'm just afraid they're trying to do an end run around us.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think
Called
so
a whipsaw.
too.
And get all the other approvals that they need, and then come back here and say, state has no problem. What do you guys have a problem?
I mean, that's classically the way consultants do these kinds of things. We all know that.
Well, I think that the council, as the historic trust,
No offense.
has the right to say, we're in receipt of this letter, write them back. We're in receipt of this letter that the council, requested specific information, they don't have assessment, and that before the state can make a determination, secret has to be complete, and they should request all secret documentation and EAFs and visual,
And also the alternatives.
visuals and the alternatives before they make a decision here.
Well, send that to SHPO and CC the consultant.
Yeah, and the museum, because they are the secret
And the
lead
museum.
agency.
Right.
Because they probably don't even know what secret involves, to tell you the truth.
Don't even know they can spell. I would suggest that Rich, Martin, and Mike coordinate on the letter. Rich from the historic side of things, Mike from the secret side of things.
Good idea.
You can do that.
All right, do I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion on that one.
Second.
All right, the letter be prepared.
Do we have a vote?
All
Yeah.
in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
You know, I think I said at one of the meetings that I happened to be at the Vanderbilt, and I didn't even think about it. After the public hearing, people saying, their cell phones don't work there and they can't contact anything like that. And I just, without thinking about it, I had to call my wife and tell her I was on my way home. And I just pulled out my phone and made the call.
And mine worked that day.
And now maybe down near the water, when you get down at the bottom of the hill, the line of sight is such that you don't get the reception. But when you're on the top of the hill, it works. Where the parking lot is. So I don't know.
Well, remember I said put in a repeater down below. Much less costly, and you get good coverage that way.
All right, so Mike and Rich will work up the letter and you'll send it to the...
Yeah, I understand it's a revenue stream for them that they could use the money, but you have other considerations here.
So this letter will come from Rich or from Gloria?
Come from the CQ. No?
I think it should come from the CQ.
Come from the
So
CQ.
to show the state that you've reviewed this and you have these concerns.
Sent by the chair,
Yeah.
yes.
I think so.
And not only the CEQ, but this, from a secret point of view, but the Historic Trust, too. The council has the County Historic Trust.
And that gives the state some contact people, they're probably going to have their own questions and who to coordinate their questions with.
I mean, quite obviously, time is not of the essence here because our letter was May 25th of 2011, and this letter didn't go out until June 20th, 2012.
That's why I say I think they're trying to get it by just letting it lie low, and hopefully we would have forgotten.
Have you talked to anybody in VHB?
No. We just got this the other day.
And I haven't contacted anyone with the...
And requested that they send all the environmentals and everything else to the,
I've had no contact. I wanted to bring it here first.
All right. Well, I would suggest you might call up VHB, who are the consultants, and request, has the EAF been updated and the visuals, for the various alternatives been done, and was that sent to the state as well as,
Their last meeting, they were talking about getting a crane and a balloon in there to do the visuals.
All right. Anything else under correspondence?
Nope.
Okay.
Is there any opportunity for the public on this Vanderbilt item?
Oh, sure. If you want to say something,
you.
please do.
Where should I sit or stand?
Just come up in front.
My name is Mark Seratoff. I'm a resident in the area. I've been following the Vanderbilt wireless issue for a long time. And there are alternatives besides the Vanderbilt property. Right nearby is the Centerport Firehouse on 25A. And I think they already have an antenna over there. Across the street is the Centerport Post Office. That might afford an area for an antenna. Nearby across the harbor, then there's the Centerport Boatyard right on the harbor, a commercial area, and it only has residents on one side. Across the harbor is the Coast Guard station. That might afford, that has hundreds of acres that might afford an alternative to the Vanderbilt. And to the west, there are numerous boatyards in Huntington and parallel to Lloyd Neck that would afford commercial property for an antenna and not surrounded by residents. The residents are very unhappy about that. It's out of character, and they're worried about possible health effects of the radio frequency radiation on causing cancer, birth defects, etc. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Just out of curiosity, how did you know that this was going to come up?
I didn't. I'm here on something else.
Oh, okay.
Serendipity.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Housing programs?
All right. Next on the agenda, Historic Trust docket, Director's report.
Okay. We did fill the 3 vacancies that we had in the housing program at the Norfolk Preserve, South Haven County Park, and the Bayman's Cottage at the Maritime Museum. And those tenants will be moving in shortly. We're still working on the custodial agreement with the Maritime Museum. We did meet with them to negotiate additional buildings and grounds that we're going to add to their contract. So that's an active conversation right now, but it is moving forward. I also want to bring up today that we had a press conference with the county executive yesterday at the Homan House to kick off the stabilization and the beginning of the restoration of that house. We got a good turnout, and we did get some promises from the county exec that he would support the completion of this project. So that is underway, and we should have it stabilized by the end of the year so we can begin the interior restoration work. And the Yaphank Historic Society will partner with us to do a lot of that interior work at this point.
Rich, which one's the Homan House?
That's the one directly across the street from the Hawkins house.
On the right side going
When you
north.
first...
Okay.
Okay.
I know which one.
Yep. And that's the last of the 3 houses that we'll be restoring in that historic district. The Booth House is now open to the public for tours, as well as the Hawkins House. And I also wanted to bring up today a suggestion. We always talk about meeting off-site for our CQ meetings, and we had discussed the possibility of going to the Van Borgendine just to show that site to everybody. But what's going on right now is Lessings has put a proposal in for Timber Point. Their contract expires at the end of this year. They did get awarded the extension, or a new contract actually, for another 20-year agreement with the county. And part of that proposal is a addition to the building and some renovations, but the addition especially I'd like the CQ to review and approve and make any comments. The architect's plans are in draft form, but I think we could take a look and give any suggestions towards the completion of those plans. So I'm suggesting, if possible, depending on the agenda, if we could meet there in August.
Does anybody have any problems with that?
How big? No problem.
Sounds great.
How big an extension?
We'll see in August.
You'll see, yeah. But it's to
That's how you keep an
change
idiot in suspense.
the addition of the building that was put on in the 50s. So I'm comfortable with it, but I'd really like everyone to take a review of it.
Was Timber Point the one we went to once before in Sayville?
That's West Sayville. You went to the Maritime Museum?
No,
We had a hearing there.
Oh, but you did have your hearing at Timber Point.
Yeah, this was, that was
We had
the
to carry-
one on
that's
Yaphank.
right, we did
That was
that.
the original
Yeah.
Yaphank,
For rainy day.
2008,
Yeah, we had to carry
I
that.
think it was.
How long
That
has
long ago?
Lessing's contract?
8 or 9.
The new contract?
No, the previous one.
It was 20 years.
It was? They've been there 20 years?
Yes. Yeah.
Long
And that ends this year. They're looking to fast track this addition. It's actually an additional capital project that they suggested because they feel they can book the room that much more if they had this addition. So if they could get all the permits and everything in place, they'd actually like to start in the winter of 2013.
Now, they would pay for that? That would
Yes,
be
this is all
blessing?
Lessings, no county funds.
That's the kind we like.
Absolutely.
But it is an historic site, so
Right. They're going to keep it all in...
well, design needs to be compatible to the existing structure, and there could be other comments, but we can put additions on.
You don't have the draft architectural plans now.
I do here
That-
actually.
Oh, can we see that?
I could just
Can you
pass
pass
this
it
around.
around? That's great.
Will
And,
you be able to send something
Architect's
to the
drawings.
council, Richard, prior to the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I could include something in your packet.
Do you happen to have a magic marker with me? Wow, that's major.
That's it.
This?
That's all I have today.
That's it?
Settle like this.
Anybody else have any questions of Richard? All right, we'll move along.
I mean, if this is the original building, this should be the-
Next one thing on the agenda is recommended type 1 actions is the proposed sewer district number 3, Southwest Bergen Point wastewater treatment plant outfall replacement project, Town of Babylon.
Chris.
I'm John Donovan, Chief Engineer, Sanitation, Public Works. The Commissioner's here, and also Ben Wright, and we have Mary Ann Taylor from CDN Smith. She's a consultant working on this project. Thank you for allowing us to make this presentation. I'm just going to give a short background, and I'm going to turn it over to Mary Ann. Probably all familiar with our Bergen Point treatment plant down in West Babylon. Treats 30.5 million gallons per day, and the treated effluent from that plant is conveyed through an outfall pipe about 6 miles, a little more than 6 miles underneath the Great South Bay, through the Barrier Island, and out into the ocean. So we're here today to talk about the portion that is underneath the Great South Bay. We're looking to replace that portion of pipe, being that that pipe has had historical failures in other applications across the country, and we want to be proactive and make sure that we don't have any problems with it. So we're looking to do a new tunnel project, tunnel underneath the bay instead of doing open cut in the bay, which would be a nightmare environmentally, we all know. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Mary Ann Taylor. She has a little presentation to give you a background on how we arrived at the option that we chose, which is a tunneling option. Thanks.
So Michael, be kind now, because he's a consultant.
I like Marianne. I will be mean to.
Nothing new there.
All right, first we'll go through a little bit of background. As John said, it's over 6 miles long, the outfall. I'll just go back and forth a little bit here. So we're looking from the plant all the way to the Barrier Island, and then another few miles offshore it discharges into the Atlantic Ocean. The first section, the section of pipe underneath Great South Bay, is pre-stressed concrete cylinder pipe. The portion out into the Atlantic Ocean is concrete lined steel pipe, so 2 different kinds of pipe. Some time ago, the county became aware of failures of this PCCP pipe elsewhere throughout the country, kind of catastrophic failures. So that prompted them to be a little bit proactive and start investigating their own pipe. And as it turns out, the pipe that was manufactured around 1977, around the same time that this pipe was manufactured, had some of the highest failures. There were different manufacturers. They have the Interface and the Price Brothers, and it was this exact same type of pipe that they were seeing failures. So they did a lot of testing. They did some acoustical monitoring that showed that there were a lot of wire breaks of the pre-stressed concrete cylinder pipe, the wires in the pipe. They did some structural integrity testing. They did some testing of the material itself, the mortar, out on the Barrier Island. They did some testing of the cathodic protection system, and they brought in a lot of experts from around the country, and the consensus was this pipe is in some state of deterioration moving towards failure, and the optimal thing to do would be to replace it. We met at that point with the regulatory agencies very frequently. We met with them, we had exchanged correspondence, and they kind of gave us their input on it. DEC's strategy is to eliminate any environmental impacts. If you can't eliminate it, then you should minimize them, and anything that you can't minimize, you have to mitigate. And so with their input, we developed a whole batch of different scenarios. And they basically told us what would be required if we wanted to move forward with each. The one thing that I want to emphasize is that the county conducts dye testing regularly, and there's no evidence that the pipe is leaking at all yet. You know, they're being very proactive that way. They have an emergency response plan where they're bringing additional pipe on site so that if there was a failure, if detected, they'd be able to replace that section of pipe immediately. Isn't there one other aspect to that? So they're reducing the pressure so that there's less of a chance for failure. So they're operating as much as possible with the reduced pressure to get the effluent out. So these are the 6 alternatives that we came up with. One would be a tunnel with carrier pipes, one a tunnel without the carrier pipes, and I'll go back to that in a minute. One would be open cut, and working with DEC, the original outfall was constructed with open cut. DEC explained to us all the different constraints that would be in place if we wanted to do any construction within the bay. If it was even permittable, which it probably isn't. There's a lot of windows. You have to avoid the finfish spawning pond, you have to avoid the benthic habitat, you have to avoid the shellfish impacts, you have to avoid the overwintering birds. You know, the window of construction, the maximum window of construction for open cut would be from October 1st to January 14th. So that's a very small window. They would require sheeting or coffer damming of the whole area so that you're not, as you're dredging, you're not introducing turbidity and resuspending things. So there were a lot of constraints, and they walked through the whole process with us. They were really helpful as to what would be required for each of these alternatives. We looked at a new outfall discharge into Great South Bay, which was of course eliminated immediately from a regulatory perspective. One that we had hopes for initially was lining the existing outfall with a temporary discharge to Great South Bay. As we tried to develop that alternative, it became clear there were fatal flaws associated with that. And the last one was replacing the outfall with upland recharge, which is something that people have brought up for many years now. That way you're not reducing groundwater recharge to the aquifer and you're kind of recycling things, but there were some fatal flaws associated with that option as well. If you went through the engineering design report, and I know Mike did, you'll see that there was an effluent pump station that was associated with each of these alternatives. You guys previously designated, gave out a neg deck, its replacement in kind, so that project is moving forward independently of the outfall replacement at this point. So each of those 6 alternatives was developed sufficiently so that we could do a little evaluation of constructability, how we would implement it, impacts that would occur during construction and operation, the permitting requirements, the time to implement, and then capital cost estimates. When we went through all that, the alternative that came to the top pretty quickly was what's alternative 2 in the engineering design report, and that is construction with a tunnel. The way that's going to be done is we're going to have a shaft about 30 feet diameter on the plant site, on the southern tip of the plant site, and I have some pictures of some tunnel boring machines I'll show you. It's going to go down about 80 feet, and then the tunnel is going to advance completely beneath the bottom of Great South Bay, and then there'll be another exit shaft on the barrier island just north of Ocean Parkway. These lines that you see here, the county has a 300-foot wide easement across Great South Bay. The existing outfall is the pink line, that's right smack in the middle, about 150 feet. We'd be moving 75 feet to the west of that and working within the existing easement. The only construction disturbance that you're going to see is going to be maybe about 3 acres up on the north side of the plant site and about 3 acres within this existing easement. See, here's the marina here, there's Ocean Parkway. So right about in there. And that's going to be the shaft where you're going to take the TVM out and you're going to connect up to the existing ocean portion of the outfall. So all impacts should be temporary in nature, and by temporary it's still a few years, you know, when all's said and done. But the whole point of this alternative is to avoid or eliminate any impacts whatsoever to Great South Bay. So this was a preferred alternative for a number of reasons. It could be implemented the most quickly. Well, first off, it was permittable. This is the one that the DEC was standing behind. It's something that they could get behind because there are no impacts to the bay. It could be implemented the most quickly. It had the least impacts, and then, this one and the tunnel with the carrier pipes both avoided any impacts to Great South Bay. It could be implemented relatively quickly. The one without the carrier pipes is less expensive, so that's why that came up over alternative 1. I thought you might like to see some pictures of this tunnel boring machine and kind of get an idea of the scale of the project. This tunnel boring machine is actually, I think it's starting on the Brooklyn side, I could be wrong. New York City EDC is doing a siphon underneath between Staten Island and Brooklyn right now. And this is about the same size. We're talking a 10-foot diameter tunnel. This is a 12-foot diameter tunnel. A TBM for that. This is an earth pressure balance machine. This would be the cutter heads. All told, it's a huge piece of equipment. And these are all the pieces together. It kind of takes that slurry, and there's a pipe that brings it back to a little truck that goes through the tunnel on the rail back up to the shaft and out. This one. I don't know if you can see this. This is the shaft. It's an open cut here on the siphon project, but you'll have a crane on site, and it's going to lower the TBMs down. It's going to put concrete gaskets that the tunnel's going to be lined with down into that. Then there's the little rail car that kind of brings it down to the tunnel to the working face and brings the excavated material back out to the site. So there's a nice website New York City EDC has that has a lot of pictures of construction that's ongoing right now. They have a little video that shows how the TBM works and moves everything and lays the gaskets in place. But that's pretty much what it looks like. So again, the disturbance would be, we're thinking we're going to need about 3 acres, and it would be somewhere up here at the plant. This is more than 3 acres that's shown. We're going to need a spot for the shaft. We're going to need a spot for the construction equipment and materials to be stored. We're going to need a spot where we're going to take the excavated materials and then get them off site. On this side, we're going to need another shaft, again about 30 feet in diameter, to pull the TBM out, and then we're going to have to open up to connect to the existing outfall.
And will the DEC willingly give you a wetlands permit to do that?
To open up?
Your 30-foot diameter shaft.
Oh, the shaft? They're aware of how it would be, yeah. I mean, it's not like there's an option, Larry. It has to, you know. So it's within the existing easement. What they have told us is that anything has to be restored, you know, so any vegetation that we take out is going to have to be replaced. If you're going to have any permanent destruction, then you have to replace like 5-to-1 nearby. But we're not planning that it's going to be permanent. We're planning that it's going to be immediately restored. The work would go on right here. You can see a little bit better. Here's the marina, and it would be right in this area here.
And could you store your trucks and stuff on the beach as opposed to in the wetland?
Well, I don't know if it's a wetland. That's a big question.
The wetland is back here.
That's a wetland.
This is I mean, you can walk there. That's pretty dry. You can almost see where the change in
There's frags
vegetation
up
is,
there.
Larry. Like here's wet. This is like grassy. This part is not so wet.
Okay.
Actually, Marianne, in your documents
Yeah.
that were submitted to us, there's a question as to what exactly is over there, and that might help in terms of if you got photographs. In some places it talks about removal of marsh vegetation, in other places it talks about that it's grassy and it has Phragmites on it. Phragmites being a disfavored species.
Right,
So
right.
I asked Mike this yesterday. He pulled out some maps. We're not exactly sure at this point in time. Is it only going to be in that little upland area, which is described in one place as previously disturbed, or is it going to go into real marshlands over there?
You mean during the connection?
Well, during all your construction phases. I mean,
The
are you going
shaft
to?
itself is it looks like there's enough room to put the shaft within the I'll call it upland. It's not exactly
Okay.
upland, but within that
A higher
area.
elevation area.
Yeah. When we have to do the cut to connect up, that's going to be, we're going to have to tap the existing outfall.
Yeah.
That's going to go down, was it about maybe 5 feet there to the existing outfall? I'm not so, I don't think the details of that have been completely worked out how to do that line tap. I mean, we know conceptually how it's going to be done, but how far they're going to have to open, if it's going to extend in, I don't think that's been designed yet.
Okay. The other reason I would bring that up is, if you're moving north, you're going to get into the wetlands. If the pipe that you're going to be tapping into is moving south, I would simply say, when you start doing this, to avoid hitting the wetlands, connect more to the south. Because again, just looking at this map, you've got that disturbed area over there, which to my eye looks like fill. If you go north, you're hitting the wetlands, and you'll have to restore.
Right. I mean, again, the state is aware, and I'm not going to say that they'd be thrilled if we had to cut into any wetlands, but they said basically you have to restore it. You're going to have to revegetate and.
All right. Well, that would be a condition, I think, at this body. Assuming that we went with a neg deck, we might put some conditions on it, matching what DEC is talking about. Basically, if you hit any of the true wetlands, as opposed to Phragmites are easily disposed of. I don't have a problem with taking them out. They're not real wetland vegetation in my eye that's worth anything. But if you're getting into Spartina, you may have upland Spartina. I don't know what's over there. You would have to detail that out a little bit and basically state that you would be restoring it as an affirmative commitment.
Let me go back 1 second here. This is dark. It's hard to see. The maximum area to be disturbed on this side, we would think would be up to 3 acres. Yeah. This here shows you. This is more like, I think, 4.5 to 5 acres. So this is kind of being a little just because we drew a box, But we try to stay within this, definitely within this 300-foot easement, and so storage of anything materials would be here. It's just that open cut part.
Yeah, you've got tight quarters. I get that.
Very tight.
Again, I'm just saying the documents themselves. The EAF is a little bit inconsistent that way. One area again on page 11 of the EAF is talking about removing marsh grass, and then someplace else it's adjacent to tidal wetlands, and someplace else it says previously disturbed. So I'm not exactly sure what's over there. I'm just trying to be careful at this point in time.
Okay.
I mean, that's our job, is what it boils down to. To catch these
it's our
differences.
intent, to work within that previously disturbed area as much as possible. I can't tell you that we're not going to encroach further north at this point.
On the slurry mix that you're going to be pulling out of there, are you going to be pulling it out at the plant?
Yes.
Or, all right, so basically you'd have I think it's about a 10,000-foot run from the beach through your track system.
I've seen different ways. They have like muck carts, and they'll just put it in the muck, and it goes on a little rail that's put in the tunnel and kind of goes back to the front end.
That's the way they're doing it in New York City with the water tunnels. I've been down there once, a long time ago. But it's a far run.
Yes.
That removes the impact.
Yeah, I have a question. What's going to be done with the slurry? What's the quantity, and then,
It's a large quantity with the bulking factors that you put on. On the outside it's 90,000 cubic yards. It's probably going to be closer to 80,000, but we're going to say 90,000 because we don't know exactly the bulking factor. There's a batch of different options that we've discussed, and I guess a lot of it depends on the timing of the project. There's some talk that DPW could use it for beach nourishment.
Exactly.
They're talking about stock. Well, it also depends on what we take out, because a lot of it is very fine, and there's some restrictions as to what kind of sand. It has to meet a certain classification to go on different beach sites. But they being DPW identified several potential sites for that. There's talk about stockpiling some of the material to deal with breaches of the barrier island in the future. There's talk that the contractor himself may wish to take it and have a beneficial use.
That stuff is worth money.
It's not all sand. If I go back to...
if you look at the core samples, a lot of it's clay and fine
Well, you
silts.
got mammoth green sand on the South Shore, so a lot of that portion that's going to be clay.
Yeah, but not all of it. If you look at these maps and you look at the numbers that they were giving, a fair amount of good sand.
The yellow sand, the yellow is the coarser material. The browns tend to have more fines, really fine sand or silty sand or clay sand. It's still useful for fill for different things. There's, but that hasn't been exactly determined yet. I'm told that it kind of depends when this project moves forward and what the particular needs are at that time.
I'll tell you right now, sand added, if you get good coarse material
Mm-hmm.
that you use for beach replenishment and things like that, anywhere from 10 to 20 bucks a yard. I mean, that's a valuable
Right.
offset. Yeah, but you can't fully tell that. I mean, it's almost like a field decision.
Yeah.
Some of it's going to be mucked out, some of it could be stockpiled. It
Right.
depends upon what you hit.
They did a batch of
Yeah,
borings
no,
that are
this is
DEC
the question.
permits
Yeah.
to do these deep borings right through. But they're widely spaced, so there's a lot of interpretation.
Right.
Yeah.
The contractor may choose to do some additional borings, and he may have a more accurate representation of the variety of sand.
Again, this is looking far
facilities.
forward, but as someone who's experienced in dredging projects and dealing with sand replenishment and on beaches and things like that, again, it's almost like a field decision. If and or when it goes to contract, I would suggest that the county reserve the right to basically say yes to some stuff and no to other stuff, depending upon what they see, and when they dewater. But that's going to be another problem. When a lot of this stuff is going to be a slurry. You got groundwater and or infiltration from the Great South Bay. You're going to have a slurry mix. You're going to have a dewatering issue at Bergen Point.
Normally, there's again a couple of different ways that you
Yeah,
could
you
deal with
dike it or whatever.
You could have you would probably have a settling thing on site, and they try to reuse the slurry part as much as possible. They recycle that because they got the bentonite in it or whatever.
You're hoping it's bentonite.
Right. And a lot of contractors have proprietary things where they have to give you the MSDSs on it and everything, but it's kind of secret chemicals because it depending again on your materials. This isn't rock, luckily, but it could be pretty abrasive. So they.
Yeah, but you can see a lot of that in a settling basin. One project I was involved with on the Suffolk River, we ended up with dikes. We also did that, Larry, at West Meadow. We had settling basins over there, and you were able to pick and choose the sand, essentially.
I've also heard the potential of just kind of pumping it to some kind of hopper barge that, I don't know. There's a lot of options. And
that's a second handle, though, and that if you put it into a hopper,
right.
you're going to have to put silk curtains around it because literally when you dewater in that kind of a situation, no matter what kind of filters you use, you're going to have fines get back in, and that's what DEC is going to have a problem
and
with.
rightly so, yeah.
I mean, it looks like upland dewatering more than anything else.
Most likely.
What's the process for the
They did.
securing and review of the core samples? What?
They have to
So
have a
that,
certain
you mean
way
of the sampling that was already done?
No, going forward as they do a site, because they're going to, is there, are they going to have to do intermittently some sort of additional core samples to see what there is there? Is there some sort of program that's being devised for that? And who's going to be reviewing that? I mean, you had mentioned that the
DEC does the initial review based on the core samples, and then when they start pumping stuff out, DEC generally has somebody on hand looking.
So that so it will be done by DEC. And what about the county being involved with having a say about what happens to the material?
That's something DEC doesn't have any say on that.
Right.
That's the county's.
But that's why I'm
job.
asking about the county having.
Well, this is 70 feet down. There's no reason to think that it's contaminated.
No, I'm not looking at contamination. I'm talking about what the composite is of the actual soil itself. I'm not talking about contamination.
Well, the county, you'll have CM on site who will be.
We'll have staff on site as well as consultants. We'll be watching this thing like a hawk. The only thing I would say, and keep in mind, and you all know this is very early on, we may leave the option to contract. If the material's good, even though we might want it, there is a benefit to the contractor to get an offset price too, which might reduce the price. This is a big nut that we're looking at. So
what I'm asking is there some sort of system that you've devised to address that?
We will. Yeah,
Not
we
yet,
will at that
but
point.
Okay, not yet. Okay.
Means and methods is what it boils
right.
down
Yeah.
to.
Okay.
Yes.
Right, we did sampling. And we
Right.
sampled.
Well, that's what I'm asking now, because that's the kind of thing if they map it out.
You literally should
Yeah,
pick and
but
choose.
what we usually do in architecture, we set up what the rule is going to be, what they have to do.
I didn't know, but
Yeah.
dredging, it's a
Would you
different
mind explaining briefly the ground tracing technology involved with the boring?
I certainly will tell you what I know. It's described in, I think, one of the appendices in the back. I've never actually seen it myself. It's a very common practice in
I had a
he's talking
contractor
about
who
ground
take
freezing.
Oh,
and it was
This was something else to try to minimize impacts, of dewatering or anything like that. And it's pretty cool. What they would do is they inject It's kind of like concentric pipes, and they chill it to like minus 20 degrees, the water that goes down, and they recirculate it, and they just keep doing that. You know, they inject wells in that big acidity, and it freezes. I mean, it freezes the groundwater within it. And then you can excavate out what's in between. So you have a wall. I forget how thick this wall was going to be. I gotta say, we do maybe, like, I'm told 10 projects like that a year over in Germany. It's not done as frequently here, but it would be pretty neat. So we would need, that's the one thing we would need, to have a generator on site in order to maintain that chill. Once you get it cool, you can shut the power down because you just want to maintain it. You don't have to keep it up. And then when you're done, you shut it off, and it just defrosts, and you're back in business.
I have a question. That minimizes your water infiltration into the system?
Yeah, it's frozen. Yep.
It was
They do it with
used
the
on the
glaciers in the
Raritan
Alps.
sewer tunnel. We got to see it when we did a site visit. It's very effective.
Now, in order to do that, you have to put down pipes throughout the bay?
No.
This is just in the...
That's just the shafts. This is another thing that we're doing to try to minimize disturbance here and actually on the site, because you don't have to drive the secant pile walls or drive the sheet piles or anything like that, and you don't have to de-water. It's just for the shafts. The entrance shaft at the head end, where you're going to lower your TBM and you're going to lower your concrete segments that are going to line it, and then here when you want to pull it all up.
But I'm talking about as you go along, you're freezing...
No, you're not freezing anything along
Just
here.
the shafts.
Oh, just the shafts.
Just
Now,
the shafts.
what about, you have any water infiltration as you go underneath the bay? I mean,
Well,
you've
that's
got
the ground.
sand and groundwater and
Well,
whatever.
as you're going along, and I think I might have,
Jimmy Crowder, that's what they do.
let me find some pictures of the panels. You're gonna have liners like this, precast concrete, and the tunnel boring machine actually, you know, you load it up and it kind of puts that in place across, and then that's all grouted and sealed. They're gasketed. You can see sort of where the gaskets are, so that minimizes infiltration.
For the generators, I forgot what it said in the report. Are you going to have on-site storage of diesel fuel for the generators?
Probably.
85,000 gallons.
Yeah, for the lifetime of the project, yeah, thank you. For the lifetime of the project, at this preliminary stage, we estimate about 85,000 for the power, for the, that's just for the freezing, the ground freezing.
Okay. But that's the total amount you're going to use, right? That's
There
the
may
total
be
amount
other
of fuel. I mean,
equipment, the
are you
cranes
going to have
and
like a
that.
tank out on site is it going to, how much is
How much is going to be on site at a time?
Right.
I don't think we figured that out yet.
Okay.
The southern part, I mean, we really don't have to start. We don't have to start this till we're pretty far along, because right. So this part isn't going to be operating anywhere nearly as long as that part is. You know, we're not going to start this the first year. We'll wait probably till the last year to do that shaft. So there won't be so much stored there. The 85,000 is the total for both sites.
Yeah.
A couple quick comments, looking at some of the alternatives that you looked at. The number 4, which is dispersal into the Great South Bay. What you and I discussed this quickly before the meeting. Just so it's on the record, one of the problems with the Great South Bay is you don't have good water exchange in there. Water seems to sit in there. It only goes out through the inlets. More than anything else, the water in the Great South Bay goes up and down. There's not, again, dispersal. So aside from the engineering aspects that you have in here, I think one of the biological aspects is if you're pumping, no matter how you do it, pumping effluent into the Great South Bay, even if you get it down to 4 mg per liter of nitrogen, you're still going to have basically nitrogen at high concentration sitting in there, and again going up and down. And since there's massive efforts to try and protect the Great South Bay at this point in time against brown tides and everything else and restore the benthic populations, that would be another strike from the biological standpoint. You just don't do that into an area. Now, Larry has been doing some work in Hewlett Harbor to the west. Hewlett Harbor lies to the north of Long Beach Island, and it basically has two exits, one out through the Atlantic Beach Bridge, which is called Reynolds Channel, and the other one through Point Lookout. I think that's the Jones Beach cut. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the water goes up and it goes down. It does not have a very good water exchange, and that's why you're getting biological impacts in there. Everything from giant algal blooms on down, and people have been noticing it for years. So in that sense, alternative 4, just from the engineering standpoint, is no good, in my opinion. But from the biological standpoint, which you didn't really address that well, it's even worse. And I understand you guys are the engineers. Okay, you're just looking at the engineering aspect.
Right.
I'm putting a stake through number 4, through its heart, because
I think
there's
we're all
further
on board
report.
with that, yeah.
Problems. The other question I have is on the open cut and the dredging of the route over there. Why so deep on the pipes? The Great South is maybe 5, 6, 7 feet deep over there. Why would you go down, I think, 16 feet, something like that?
Hold on 1 second. The big thing is you have to get down below the dredging depths of the state boat channels.
The state boat channels, okay.
Yeah.
Which I think are 30 feet.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
believe, if I
we do
remember right.
come up to some point.
All right.
I could probably.
Yeah, there is one channel that's about 30.
Okay, so you'd have to go.
That's
Yes.
this one, right?
Yeah.
Over there.
Yeah.
So part of it is just a navigation thing.
Okay,
And
so
the
ba-
other is that you want to maintain a certain amount of cover over the pipes when they're.
Well, I was going to say, there's, except for the boat channels themselves, there's not many draggers in there or anything like that. I was curious to see why you would need that much cover over the pipelines. I mean, typically, for example, a telecommunications cable, when they dig them, they're not that deep. They have some cover of a sand, but they don't go 30 or 40 feet deep.
Right.
Sometimes they're just almost laid down 2 feet deep, something like that. You can't basically bend and bow the pipe, is what you're saying. You have to keep a certain angle to it
That's
to maintain.
constructability is part of it, and the other part, I think we had some pictures in here. I think the other part is you want to maintain a certain amount of cover just for pressure reasons. I lost.
To keep the pipe intact, I would assume.
More so you don't want it popping up.
Oh, okay. So suddenly somebody's fishing, they catch a pipe.
Or it catches them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your big boat.
Like corpses in New Orleans.
Okay. Again, I've had some experience with dredging projects, and I was just curious why it needed to be so deep. But I think you answered those questions.
Okay. Yes. So let me go. All right, I think we need.
I had a couple other questions, Jim, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
The southern entrance, who owns that right now? Mike says, has looked at some of the subdivision or tax maps, and says it's owned by New York State,
I believe
along
that's.
Gilgo.
I believe that's the case at the Parks Department, right? Yeah, we have the easement. We guys have the easement with the Parks Department. Right.
It's not a problem. Okay.
Now, the existing easement would cover this?
Yeah, the work would all be done within the existing.
No, but I'm saying you don't have to need additional approvals from the park.
Oh, you would? Yeah, they would want to know that you're opening up and yeah.
What's the timetable? You're planning
The
to...
timetable for this is really.
Capital budget has this in 3 years, 2014, 15, and subsequent years. So we can't start until we have all the funding, so it'll start in 2016.
Ah, okay.
So the plan would be to have the design ready to go so that you're ready to bid when you've got the funding in place.
Marianne?
Yes.
Looking at the executive summaries and all the other paperwork that we were given, I'm trying to figure out which way you're looking at this. Are you basically saying that from the environmental permitting aspect, it's more of a lack of impact as opposed to a mitigation? Basically, by tunneling underneath, you're not disturbing the finfish,
Right.
the benthics and everything else that's over there. So you're saying...
DEC kind of had a 3-tier thing. The first thing is to avoid any impacts, and the second would be to minimize any impacts that you're going to, that are unavoidable, and the third is to mitigate any of those reduced impacts. So we tried to kind of follow their hierarchy and avoid impacts to the maximum extent possible, and then mitigate those unavoidable impacts.
So the impacts you're really seeing right now are the Gilgo Island aspect of it, where you might affect some marshland.
Right.
and that's about it
We're
in
going
terms
for
of an impact.
short-term, yeah, short-term construction, short-term again, you know, I use that term loosely, short-term construction-related impacts, that's it. After that, you're going to turn it on, it's going to operate exactly as it's operating today. There should be no other long-term impacts, nothing is going to stay that's visible to anybody or, you know.
Will it allow further usage of the plant? Right now, we've authorized, I think, up to about 40 million gallons per day. And I know the pipe as it exists right now, I think it ranges between 18 and 110 million, something like that. I was just reading, I don't remember the numbers, I just saw them a minute ago. Well, I can read, that's why. Can't retain it, I don't remember any of it. At any rate, will this increase capacity at all?
We don't do that now.
Well, I know they can't do it right now because they're afraid the pipe will rupture. But will it be able to go that much higher on a consistent basis, approaching those numbers?
The pipe would be able to take that much. It's going to be really constrained by the effluent pump station, whatever you design into that pump station.
Well, I understand that, but what's the total capacity of the pipe? Suppose that DPW wanted to expand the sewer districts in the future, could it be expanded or not?
The existing pipe, which is 6-foot diameter, could handle 190 million gallons a day as a peak flow.
Okay, all right.
This is a bigger pipe.
All right, so it could handle more. I have a question for you, too. At these 2 points where you're going to drill down, are there measures to be taken to prevent flooding from hurricanes?
There would have to be, yeah.
I mean, I would assume you don't want this thing getting
No.
flooded if you end up with a storm surge and...
Yeah, they would have to be protected against that eventuality. Yeah, you're right.
And that's not in the plans yet? Or
No, at this stage...
The plans as they stand right now are very, very cursory.
Well, that's a problem.
We've got a ways to go to get actual construction plans to that point where we have to come to that level of detail of, you know, how high we have to make it to protect it from hurricanes and things like that, so.
Okay.
Good point.
What's the life expectancy? What's the life expectancy?
Something like this should be 100 years, I would say. I don't know that for a fact, but typically outfalls you design for a really long time. I mean, I look at New York City's plants, and most of their outfalls are a lot older.
The existing pipe had a life of 100 years.
And how long did it last?
For this?
Well, ours is still lasting. There's been the problem pipe was constructed in like 73, 74.
Yes.
So that's when this pipe was purchased. And there's been failures of this pipe elsewhere in the country. Most of the failures have been water pipe. They carry water, potable water, and they operate at higher pressures. And that's one of the benefits we have. We're mostly a gravity. This acts as a gravity siphon.
Okay.
And we only pump when it's high tides or something like that. And even when we pump, I think the max we've ever pumped is like 20, 25 pounds pressure. And the water pipe that has failed is around 75, 80 vacancy. So that's kind of given
If I
us
can
that.
just interrupt John, just to give you some perspective on it. During the March storm of 2010, we had flows going through the plant of 105 million gallons per day. It was all treated, but it was, you know, we generally treat, 30 million gallons per day? So the pipe, we were able to maintain that high of a flow, keep the pressure low, and thus, you know, not impact the concern about the thing failing. So
We're going to get insurance?
Well, I was going to say, what's the assurance in this?
No,
whole
insurance.
Thing? Yeah, well, insurance.
County self-insured, but...
Yeah. You're talking about the old pipe. It was the pipe itself, but not the gaskets. So
There is no, the pipe is, it's just pipe.
Right, but you have gasketing. I mean, there's the connections are gasketed, and so
They're just a bell and spigot. They just fit into one another.
That's kind of like, this is what you've got. You've got the outside concrete core and the steel in between and concrete. That's what you have.
So, okay.
That's what's there now.
Yeah. Yes.
I lost my train of thought. Yeah, go with somebody else.
Larry?
What are we expected to do today? We have a concept in front of us. I'm dead serious.
Yeah.
We have a concept in front of us. From what I'm hearing, there's a lot of things that are undecided. okay, as to how you're gonna protect it from a surge, how you're gonna do this, how you're gonna do that, and the other thing. You want us to type it? That is to say, call it a type 1 action?
I think you've already done that,
It's
no?
already done that.
Yeah.
Preliminarily.
Rich, you're almost looking at it as if it's a type 2 planning, and we don't have full details. I don't know that we can classify it as a 2.
Yeah.
I mean, we always could, but I don't know that we can classify it as a 2 because of certain...
Well, Mike at the beginning of the meeting said
It's
it
a
can't,
one.
it's got to be a type 1, okay, for whatever reason. I don't think I'm prepared to say this is a neg deck or a pos deck.
It's too early in the process?
I don't have enough information.
Well,
I have a lot of engineering information.
Yeah.
I hear that the state DEC likes this and doesn't like that and wants you to do something else. I hear that there are undecided issues here.
Well, protection against a hurricane isn't...
That's the only thing. I mean, there's other
Okay,
things.
so what other information would you like? Maybe we can...
Whatever that we've been asking for here, you say, well, that hasn't been decided yet. You know, and I'm just...
Mike, it really comes out as a 2. It's a plan.
If this was type 2 to get the original funding to create
A study, I mean, that's a study.
Yeah, but
now you're
can we say to type 1 and this
That's
is
the
the planning study
planning- that's the
required to
planning
come back to
portion
us?
of
No, 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 no. Now the proposal before you is the replacement of the outfall.
is the preferred
pipe.
alternative.
And the preferred alternative is the tunneling, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Right.
And that's been clearly stated?
yeah.
Yes. Yep. That's a
So
recommended
then we're
alternative.
basically being asked to basically tunnel with a tunnel boring machine.
Right.
So that's the preferred alternative.
Okay.
And the impacts, I think we've defined the impacts.
In a general way, yeah, you have. I mean, you've come close to specificity, but
I mean, we're going to have
not
up
100%.
to 3 acres disturbed for maybe 6 months to 9 months at this site. Up to 3 acres disturbed at that site for up to 3 years.
No, Marianne, there's a lot
Yes.
of information in here. In certain ways, I agree with what Rich is
We
saying.
got 30 days.
I mean, we've got a very good conceptual grasp of what's going on in terms of a broad, overarching look at it. We have a fair amount of the details. I think we understand the technology that's being used is not unusual. You know, we've identified some of the impacts and things like that, but again, we don't have full plans. Would it be a problem? And I might address this to Rich. You know, we classify it as a type 1, and we make a request that when they have final details, they come back with those final details, and so that we can just double check them. I mean, would that satisfy you and enable us maybe to look at this as a plan? Because we don't have full everything.
Well, SEQA says the environmental review should take place as early as possible, you know, in the planning phases. You have enough information here. The county sent out a coordination letter seeking lead agency on July 9th. The agencies have 30 days, so technically I would recommend we wait to see what the various agencies have to say with the county being secret lead agency.
I
And
mean,
possibly...
DEC has made their position clear. DEC,
Yeah, but
yeah.
under coordinated review, yeah.
We also
I understand.
request what they
I
think
understand.
the impacts and information from the agencies as well.
Gotcha.
So I would like to see that before any decisions are made by the CEQ on which to proceed, especially since we're talking about 2016. It's not like we need to do it yesterday because the outfall pipe's in the middle of the bay.
Is it going to knock off anybody's timeline?
Yes, Ben.
No, just our critical time period here is we have to have secret completed before we ask for any money. So that was
Right.
2014.
No, I'm not saying to delay this indefinitely, Ben. I'm just saying we want to hear back from the other agencies. And possibly we might form a committee to review what was said today and try to answer questions the councils have. I mean, like one of the things I mentioned, you know, about storm surges and inundation. I mean, the answer to that is if you write a neg deck, say that they're going to make plans in order to prevent this from happening, X, Y, and Z, and that will be incorporated into the project, as well as some of the other things too with respect to the slurry and some other stuff in terms of types and what will be done with it. You can make recommendations either if it's neg deck, as part of the neg deck, or if it proceeds to an EIS, and once you get through with the EIS, you could actually neg deck it once the draft is done. You don't have to proceed to a final, but have something in place that shows that certain impacts will be mitigated. I mean, a little bit more specific than we have in these things.
So can you give me an example of the type of impact that you would need mitigation for?
Well, as you mentioned, on the staging areas on either end.
Yes. How they're going to be restored, you mean?
How they're going to be restored, the types of things that will be put in place in order to mitigate those types of things. I think that type of thing should be placed in the negative declaration. I mean, it doesn't have to be specifics, specs, or anything like that.
Just say you'll
Address.
do it.
It would be addressed that say if marshland is disturbed, the county will restore these areas in compliance with DEC requirements.
But we can make that a recommendation in neg deck anyway.
Right. I mean, but at this point in time, this is like the first time the CEQ is discussing this and getting it. I'd like to wait to find out what the other involved agencies have to
1 month
say.
isn't going to kill us.
Right.
And possibly have a committee to refine some of these issues.
So basically, right now, we'd be looking at sand usage, storm surge, both at the tunnel entrances and at the plant, the staging areas, the marsh disturbances. Those are the areas you're looking at?
Yeah, to zero in a little bit more to see if we can answer some of those questions and come up with a strategy how to mitigate.
Could be.
I understand what the gentleman over there, I don't remember what his
Gil.
name is. Gil. And he said that this technique has been used elsewhere in Germany and in...
the ground freezing. This technique, the TVM is being used right now in New York.
Yeah, Dave.
If I'm not mistaken, the tunnel boring machine is set up to bore through solid rock.
Some
and when
are.
it hits something soft, it stops.
No. It depends on the design of your tunnel boring machine. There's different cutter heads for rock.
But here we're going to be dealing with a fluid situation.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sand is almost like water.
Yeah, that's right.
And so the machine has to be set up to that. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
And
That's
it
part
has
of the
to
design of the
be
machine.
and what's happening behind the machine as it advances has to be reinforced to hold that sand and what have you in place.
And then the concrete line or the gaskets are put in place behind the machine as it advances. But the cutter head, this is the cutter head.
I understand that.
And depending, it looks a little different for rock than it does for a sand or for a clay. Based on the geotechnical work, there's, along with that engineering design report, there's an even thicker geotechnical set of appendices that has all the borings that we did go across.
I did go through this whole thing, believe me.
Okay, thank you. But
It's heavier than I want to carry around.
the additional appendices are even thicker. But based on that geotechnical information, the contractors who would respond to the bid would have a couple of different options. They could say, we need additional information, and then they'd have to get permits and go put some more holes in and collect more information. Or they could say, based on this information, we have enough. We know enough to know what the material that we're going to be tunneling through is, so that they could design their tunnel boring machine. So you get different cutters, different front ends, depending on what materials you're going to be tunneling.
Okay.
Things get old. They get beaten up pretty heavily. I mean, you got to change the cutter face all the time. I mean, those are diamond carbide tips up on
Larry?
Couple of comments. First of all, I think that you selected the right alternative. And one of the things that, in the bigger picture, that I think that the county needs to consider is that they keep the ocean outfall active, because there's a very good likelihood that we won't get very many more ocean outfalls along the Long Island, New Jersey shoreline. So this is something that's, I think, important. One of the things that I think you need to address is sea level rise, since the lifetime of this project is potentially 100 years. How is the plant, on the plant end, prepared to cope with a meter rise in sea level?
We did hydraulic grade lines as part of the effluent pump station design, and we factored that into it. I mean, we looked at existing conditions, and we looked at what would be required, you know, moving forward in the future.
Okay.
100 years? 100 years?
I don't remember, to be honest, if we did it to the end of the century, and we would have done it a few years ago, so it would have been maybe 90 years, or if we did 100 years. To be honest, I don't remember. But it would have been a significant amount of time.
And do you remember what kind of the amount of sea level rise you took into consideration?
Yeah, they're projecting. We might have gone even the maximum on, you know, with it. You know, you can do it with or without the snow melt, and we might have done maximum. But I'll have to check.
Well, in Long Island Sound, for example, over the last 25 years, the lifetime of the Long Island Sound study, the sea level has risen about 4 inches, 5 inches. So that's just 25 years.
It's accelerating.
Yeah. So the other thing that is missing here, I think, totally, at least in what I read, is there's nothing what you would do to mitigate in case there was an accident. Suppose there was a collapse in your tunnel drilling process, and you know, something happened. What would you do to mitigate issues in Great South Bay, that kind of thing?
I mean,
if there was a tunnel collapse or something like that, and while you were constructing it.
So you're talking more about a construction accident as opposed to an impact on the bay. You're talking about
during construction. Suppose there's some sort of a catastrophic failure, and that the tunnel collapses or something. I don't see anything in here about mitigation for potential damages or accidents.
You're right. I can't say that I'm aware of any tunneling projects where it's collapsed. I've heard of the tunnels getting stuck, underneath, and I know there was an instance out on the west coast. It wasn't our tunnel. They were advancing several tunnels at once. One was 5 miles, and I forget the other one. And the tunneling machine got stuck.
Yeah.
And they did, once the other tunnel machine finished on the other, they just started on the other end and kind of connected up and went through. I'm not aware of any.
Okay, so maybe the answer is that during construction of tunnels, there's never an accident. But
no,
at least we should.
I guess
we should have that kind of.
The contractor will have a safety plan for his employees and his work. I mean, just for that aspect.
I understand, but it seems to me that is also part of what we need to evaluate. What are you going to do in case there is a problem? And
retunnel.
And what are the likely accidents that could occur? What are the risk chances? I don't see any risk analysis at all.
And how it impacts the environment.
and how it would impact the environment.
Yeah,
Well-
whatever mitigation has to happen with it.
And I think, as Mary Ann said, that there will probably be very little impact, but we could look at, if it collapsed, I guess you're
Right.
worried about the floor bed sinking or
Something.
something like that. I don't, that's something we could.
John, the water tunnel that they're driving down from the Catskills in the Delaware Basin to New York City, I think it's tunnel number 3. When they have had accidents, it's either the tunnel boring machine breaks down,
Right.
okay, or else where they've had grouting and they encounter subterranean streams and things like that, they've had to do extra grouting. Okay, when the roof of the place becomes a problem, they basically, I think the methodology is they drive giant pegs in and sort of anchor everything and then grout around it. And they basically stabilize that way. That's been the major problems that they've been having. It's not the tunneling technology is, at least from what I've seen, is not. It's not like the entire tunnel collapses. They just get weak spots where just nothing's going to hold that well, and they just literally grout it. That's
But-
the kind of thing that you would have to mention to meet Larry's.
But what I was
point.
trying to get at before, and I lost my train of thought, was we're digging through, and I'll use the word digging, not tunneling, through a fluid
Right.
material.
Mm-hmm.
And you're putting these rings in behind it, these concrete rings in behind it to reinforce it.
Right.
But is there some, hiatus, so to speak, where it could collapse, where the sand or the fluid material can just fall down and you got to start all over.
I have seen pages and pages of math calculations on the pressure and what the, you know, concrete is best, you know, in pressure, in compression, you know, that's where it gets its strength.
Yeah, I'm not talking about where the concrete is now. I'm talking
between the, well, the concrete goes in kind of from the tunnel boring machine. I'll have to get you the link to that video so you can see how it's placed. But, I mean, the contractor doesn't want to jeopardize the health and safety of anybody, and he doesn't want to lose his expensive machine. So they, you know, they're pretty careful about not having, they have every safety factor in place to avoid any kind of collapse that you're speaking of.
To put it bluntly,
yes.
Again, don't ask me how I remember all of this crap. Sorry, I shouldn't say that for the machine. Until the 1960s, if I remember correctly, they used to have problems with tunnel collapses and things like that. But grouting technologies, I think they developed them in Sweden, and they started moving over to the United States, and also in Switzerland, and it came over to the United States. They haven't had those kinds of catastrophic failures in the last, say, 40 or 50 years. Some of the tunnels under the Alps, for example, the Simplon Tunnel, didn't have that kind of problem. That was through rock, but it had a lot of fissures in it, and it had a lot of underground streams and things like that. It was just simply, you're very, very careful with the grouting and the pieces of concrete that you're putting in. The point is, to meet Larry's issue and what Rich is talking about, you simply should put in that kind of information. It does exist.
You know better than I, because I just heard you talk about it in another meeting, that there's groundwater seeps, and essentially you could be having fluidized mud in areas, and if you get fluidization of the mud during construction because of vibration and so forth, what are the consequences? I don't expect you to answer. I'm just throwing it out there. We need, I think, to understand a little bit more about the potential consequences that's going to occur during disturbances.
Okay, these sound like more like engineering considerations that you're asking me, though, than environmental impacts.
Well,
but it could be a result in environmental
impact. It can
impact.
affect environmental stuff.
I mean, ultimately, if there's a failure of this tunnel, and my point of view is I don't think there's going to be a collapse. But suppose the medium you're going through is fluid, as we said, and very soft, and you put in these sections, and all of a sudden the thing starts to settle. And the joints start to separate.
Get compromised.
Or become compromised because this thing has settled. I mean, those are just considerations that should be looked at to find out if that's even a possibility.
You look at the channel. That's the example where they went through soft chalk and they had a lot of ground infiltration. That's actually your example to use. And I don't remember how they handled it. I do know they did put in a lot of grout. They were talking about that bolt system and stuff like that. But they didn't have collapses into it.
Well, I mean,
where you
I'm talking about even settling into the medium they're putting it in.
If that happened during construction, we'd have to stop and reevaluate and maybe change the way we're constructing and go back and fix whatever had to be fixed. Again, I think it's more engineering issues. I don't know if there would be any, if it's settled or whatever, what the environmental impact would be.
Well, they are issues, I mean, to some extent. I mean, what I'm saying is, you build a house, you pour a concrete thing and everything else like that, and all of a sudden your foundation starts to settle, and you got cracks in your walls, and you got all kinds of things. It's totally not an exact science, especially 80 feet below the surface where you've never been there before. So it's a consideration that maybe you should just look at and dismiss.
And you can't just dismiss the engineering from the environmental. They are very closely linked. What you're going to do when you dig a hole affects the environment. What you're going to do when you bore a hole into a mountainside affects the environment. One way or the other, whether we want to think about it that way or not, you can't separate the two. So these questions, I think, are absolutely valid and worth consideration.
But they are also easily answered. The engineering examples are out there. I mean, the channel, for example, is the perfect example because you had similar conditions. The chalk marl that was over there was very, very permeable. And I don't remember what technology they used, whether they froze it or whatever, who knows. But that's the kind of thing, that's your direct example, to say, this is how they dealt with it. You have to deal with the issue. But from an engineering side, probably it can be dealt with.
Okay.
I mean, the point is that simply these things should be considered. They can be dismissed. Nobody's saying they're a problem. Nobody's saying anything. They're saying, well, what if? I mean, what happens if this thing settles? I mean, this is enough, and all of a sudden mud flows into the tunnel. You got to shut the pipe down. Is your alternative you're going to use the old pipe?
Well, during construction, the old pipe's going to be in service.
No, I understand that. But once this goes into service, what happens if it becomes inoperable for one reason or other?
That's the same thing we're under right now.
Well,
What if you disturb
it happens.
But are you
old
going to keep
pipe?
the old pipe in order as, in case something happens, as a backup to utilize in case this
We've
becomes...
been discussing that. We haven't decided yet whether it's beneficial to keep it because it is eventually going to fail. So if you keep
No,
it-
I understand it, but
But
I'm
what
just...
if you disturb the pipe? What if you
While
disturb the
you're-
old pipe while you're still using it during construction?
Oh, we're offset, number one, by 75 feet, but number two, we're offset by probably 70 feet.
Okay.
But
Those
it-
calculations have been done.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Larry,
But it could still
we're getting
happen.
into means and methods.
The old one
which I
could
think is
still-
far afield.
could fail
Never much
for
mentioned
whatever
drought.
reason.
Oh, it
All right,
could fail
well,
today.
yeah,
It could fail today.
right.
Right, yeah, you're
I
right.
think that's what Larry's
Drought.
saying.
I just leave it up to them.
I think if we move this along, basically, what's before the CEQ is, number one, making a recommendation for the type of action and for the CEQA process. We haven't heard back from any of the involved agencies with respect to lead agency designation. The council has had some concerns they'd like to discuss or have possibly evaluated before you get to the point, but ultimately if the county receives secret lead agency status, a recommendation will have to be made to the legislature as terms of the classification of the action and whether or not a negative declaration is warranted or a positive declaration is warranted. One of the things with respect to SECRA is a public informational process. It's not an agency informational process. So therefore, do we feel there's enough protections in place to warrant a negative declaration that will stand up in court in case somebody doesn't like the secret process and issues an Article 78 or whatever it is? Or do we proceed to that next step where you have a draft environmental impact statement? And does the Department of Public Works, have they put in place possibility of doing a DGEIS or a DEIS?
Frankly, Jim, this could be turned into one.
Well, I understand that, but...
I mean, if we have to, we have to. I mean, we plan whatever comes out of it.
I think Jim has hit the nail on the head because of the great public interest in this and because of the great sensitivity about the Great South Bay. I would almost be prepared to do an impact statement because I think the public clearly is going to want to have a voice.
Yeah.
But we pick the alternative that has no impacts to Great South Bay.
Well, you got to convince them of that.
Yeah.
You picked it, but they don't know yet. I mean, have you had public meetings with respect to this
No.
in the town of Babylon?
Wait.
No, we've contacted the town and told them about the project. We told them when we were going out and doing borings.
I understand that, but we're talking about the town is not the public.
Right.
No.
Public's in the room.
Town is not the public.
No.
I mean, those are things that the council is going to have to consider before they make a recommendation to the
Yeah.
legislature. I wouldn't want to have the council make a recommendation and have 2,000 people show up before the legislature screaming and yelling about the negative impact of this project because nobody notified them.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, the importance of the public component, Jim, but I'm at a loss to come up with any other alternatives that would have less impact. to
It's
the
not a
bay.
question of that.
It's
We're
not a
not
question of
questioning
that.
that.
It's a
I think
question
you
of
picked the
informing
right
the
one.
public. I think you picked the right one. Everybody
Yeah,
might
I
agree
think
that's
we
a
all
big
agree.
debt,
We all
but you
agree
got to
we
let
picked the right
people know what you're planning and how you're going to proceed and what their input is.
And address their
That's part of
concerns.
secret.
I mean, we have to take that into account. The public's participation, that's a mandate under
So does the
secret.
legislature.
Yeah.
Ledge also. It's better to bulletproof it at this point. And again, allow the public, and there's members of the public here right now, I don't know what they're going to be talking about, or what they want to comment about. I don't know what the public may come up with. Listen, I think it's a good alternative. I think you've heard that around the table. I think it's I can identify one impact, okay, and that's some of the marshland, and you're talking about a restoral of 5 to 1. Very little impact on all of this. It's an existing project. It fits all of the neg deck criteria. Realistically, I don't see what people really could complain about, but you have to give them the opportunity. This is a $250 to $1.1 billion project, depending upon what occurs. A massive project. And it just can't be slid through, is what I'm hearing around the table. I mean, to do our job and to get this through, we almost have to, we have to go this way. And it's...
And I think one of the things that you have to emphasize, number one, this document is a very good document. You can change this into a draft environmental impact statement quite easily. But you also have to emphasize, and it says it in there, but you've said it now, is that the state DEC, okay, is on board, and they have sort of directed what we have to do. It's not like we came up with this. You came up with this idea in a vacuum. Okay, and I think that's an important, issue. And
DEC didn't direct us to do tunneling. We
no. But the limitations that they put on the county, sheeting and turbidity and spawning and of the various
Parameters.
animals that live in the water and on the shore and so on and so forth, sort of narrowed it down. Okay? And if we're going to protect those creatures and we're going to protect the water, this might be the only possible alternative. But and they have to, be taken to task for that also. So I think it's important. The other thing is, what I said before about separating secret from the engineer, from the engineering, the environmental from the engineering. When I was director of planning for the town of Huntington, we would get an application in for a big project. The environmental staff would review it, and the planning board would give it a neg deck. Then it would go to engineering, and engineering would start reviewing it, and they'd move this from this location to that location, and they'll start changing drainage and grading and this and that and the other things, to where the environmental people would go, oh my God, it's not the same project anymore. So that's why, I always tried to get them to work together, okay, and to look at things together. Now, it didn't always work because they used to butt heads a lot, but nevertheless, I think it's an important thing.
And one more thing, Rich, is anybody here from the public that would like to speak or address this particular project or proposal? Yes?
Just a quick comment on the phragmites that in that area, the Harrier hawk's nest in that phragmites area. It's not as bad an environment as you make it out to be. I've done hawk banding there. So.
In the frags, Jack?
Yeah.
So the ground
I got
nesters?
the poison ivy that
I'm not allergic to it, so I don't mind. But they use it as cover?
Well, they nest right in the phragmites.
Do they nest in Spartina at all? Upland stuff?
No, that's too open sometimes. It's the chicks. They're trying to hide the chicks.
I mean, I think that's another issue too that was discussed in terms of what the staging areas are going to be and what the environmental parameters are. I think we have to know. Everybody says, well, I think it's not in the marsh, and it might be upland and some other stuff, but I think that basically we have to have more concrete of exactly what will be impacted. I mean, in the environmental review.
So if we went out to the field and did a reconnaissance, and I have some photos, but I would bring a I'd bring a biologist or a botanist out with me. If we did that and provided that information and it is what it is, would that help in the decision making?
Oh, well, most definitely. In other words,
Yeah.
by knowing exactly what is there for the environment, you can't say, well, you made a decision, but you didn't know what was impacted.
Okay.
And another point, as I pointed out a couple minutes ago in your EAF, one area says remove marsh grass, another says it's adjacent to tidal wetlands. I don't know what's going in. Another area says previously disturbed. If you have an aerial that's pretty accurate and showing us it's not Spartina, and even though Jack loves the Phragmites, if it's disturbed area and it's got some frags in it, that's going to tell us one thing that's more easily dealt with than a Spartina. Nowadays, DEC says if you touch a blade of Spartina, you get the death penalty. But Phragmites, they generally are going to say, fine, even if there are hawks in there.
Michael, the EAF talked to 2 species that haven't been seen out there since the late 1800s, okay, as the only knowledge of endangered or threatened species. I don't know what might be out there now, probably nothing. But are we going to take that for granted, or are we going to have some authority say to us, nothing's out there?
Okay.
We just need to know is what it boils down to.
I mean, it's almost like when you do the engineering studies and you plan this whole thing. Did you do studies without knowing what the substrate is you're going to go through?
No.
And make conclusions? Well, I think from an environmental point of view, you can't do that either.
No, I understand. We didn't, because the design isn't advanced to completion or 90%, even 50%, it's nowhere near. We don't know exactly how big the hole is going to be to do the connection. So we haven't really paced off or surveyed off the area that's going to be disturbed.
Well, that's fine.
We're just going to have to...
We understand that this is the early planning stages.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
And the CEQ, before they make a recommendation, would like to have the necessary information to back up whatever their
Right.
decision.
So we'll look, as Mike said, we'll go to the maximum envelope and we'll just do a field survey and find out what...
See, if you can catch Jack in the weeds. By the way, Jack is a former member of CEQ. That's why
Just remember, there's a lot of poison ivy out there, is what he says.
There's poison ivy, there's mosquitoes and ticks, that's what I'm...
I was in there in July.
All right,
Still
so
had the poison ivy in.
I'd like to have somebody make a recommendation here.
Motion table.
Second.
Until we hear back from the involved agencies and any other public comments and whatnot. And possibly, do we want to get a letter going out to request some additional information with respect to some of these issues?
Well, I could touch base with Mary Ann to kind of shore up what issues you guys are looking for, and maybe kind of just get a little explanation on that stuff for the next meeting.
Can I just ask about what's going to happen to the existing? I know you guys are whispering
Sure.
to me, but they were trying to explain what would happen to the existing pipe to me, but...
Well, we've been kicking around whether to keep it as a backup. I kind of think that may not be the best option, because in an emergency, if you do need it, you really can't rely on it if it hasn't been used and you don't know the condition it's in and it's had a sense of failure. So we're looking to, just abandon it in place.
What about sleeving it with some polypropylene just to
keep
a little bit of pressure in there?
We looked at that as a possible option of fixing that instead of putting a whole new pipe in. The problem with that is there's a lot of bends, and to get in and do the sleeving, you have to go through the bottom of the bay, out in the bay, and put an access point to get that. So that there was going to be multiple access points just to do
So
sleeving.
you just can't do 10,000 feet of forming it through.
No, it's too much of a lot of bends.
Okay, I have a motion. Second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
Thank you.
Very nice presentation.
Nice work.
And the engineering report was first rate.
Mary Ann, I'll reach out to you sometime probably early next week to touch base.
You want to focus?
Could we take a 5-minute break before we get to the final thing?
Yeah.
In the meeting, the next thing on the agenda is the proposed construction of sidewalks on various county roads.
Oh my God.
They have a whole new
You
sign.
can say that to the person that...
They're going to have it long for us to see. No.
Victor, is this going to be $1 billion?
Yes.
Okay, just asking.
All right, Victor, I'll leave it in your hands.
Victor Cabby, Suffolk County Public Works, Highway Design. This is just a simple request for installation of sidewalks that doesn't require right-of-way acquisition or cut and fill, or if it's in environmentally sensitive areas. So just a simple install of sidewalk. Any questions?
Yeah, what are you going to do if the tunnel fails?
Yes, Dave.
I know in some places you're going to replace trees. I know there's no one around to actually water the trees. Do you do plant tree installation in the late fall? And do you follow the LIPA guidelines? It's going to run into wires for wire-friendly trees?
My name is okay.
Well, this is actually not a tree planting project, but if
I understand, but in the project, I read the project, and it says that some places you will be replacing
They may be,
trees.
yeah. If there are some areas where we can plant, we will add some planting. But that it would be on private property. It would not be on a county property. If the homeowner requested trees, and so they would be taking care of those trees. We will not be doing that.
Okay, so in other words, the homeowner would be taking care of it, and
would not be on a county right away.
okay, it wouldn't be in an easement where you have to be concerned about wires, and if the owner lets the tree die, well, that's their business.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Is anybody here from the public would like to make a comment? All right, if I have
I think this is a terrible project, so I'm going to say, what is this? I don't even know what it is. Unlisted neg deck? Type 2, fine.
Thank you.
All right, nah, it's not so bad.
All right, we have a second?
These planning craps.
Dan? All right, all those in favor?
Sidewalks, no one cares.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries.
This is a
Next thing on the agenda is proposed introductory resolution accepting the donation of the Noto property in the Mastic Shirley County Conservation Area, Village of Mastic Beach.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I think it's still morning.
Is it still morning?
Loretta Fisher. This is a small 1/3 acre parcel on the north side of Home Creek, in the village of Mastic Beach, and it's across from the William Floyd Estate, which is part of the Fire Island National Seashore properties. Approximately half the property is tidal wetland. It's undeveloped at the present time, and the individual who owns the property is interested in donating this parcel to the county for preservation purposes, as of recreation.
Did we ever find out if the National Seashore wanted to add it to that property? Wasn't there talk
Not
about?
that I know of.
Wasn't there talk about wanting to do that so that we didn't have to? We don't have any other county property anywhere near this, right?
I don't know if the sponsor has reached out or not.
It's harder to donate to the
I do know
there's town property in here.
If this can
all around
add to the conversation on that, we did have properties that on Fire Island that about maybe a decade ago we were trying to transfer to the Parks, National Park Service, and they in fact could not accept our donations, quote unquote, because they would have to expend money to do surveys and their due diligence, and they had no funding at the present time, so it may not be as easy as you might think, unfortunately. And we're still trying, but...
The town has property.
It's out of curiosity. What is the advantage then for us to have this, of the county to have this property? If there's no other...
the advantage would be that it would be left in its natural state, would not be developed on a waterway, and because of its low-lying location, you're not, you're reducing the amount of development in and around the important waterway. So that would be the interest in the
I
county.
mean, the other interest
From an
is you
environmental
reduce,
position.
environmentally, you reduce the septic loads that are going to go directly into a creek. If you put a house over there, you basically save, if you will, the littoral zone that's in the area. We have the county is right now trying to help out this particular area by buying properties in floodplains, because this, potentially could be flooded out, and claims could be made, on an insurance side of things. It's always better when you're along the seashore, and these types of inlets to try and reduce development as much as possible, since we've learned that it's most dangerous to build over there.
Does the donator live on either side of this property?
Not that I know of.
Marion?
What is the, I have two questions. What does the person who donates this property, what do they gain?
Tax.
And the second question is, what are the potential negative impacts on the county if they accept it?
The gain from donation could possibly be a tax write-off. That would have to be done privately. We're not involved in any assessments on the property. That would be done between him and his tax advisor. But that's a potential plus for him, for her. And any potential liability with regard to the county would be minimal, in the sense that we're not building structures or any kind of infrastructure here. We would just be maintaining.
Well, it also comes off the tax rolls.
That wouldn't be well, yeah, that would
Whatever
be,
little
yes,
bit,
a little bit that this
the
would
county
bring
gets.
to the county.
Yeah, the county gets
Correct.
very little of this.
And am I correct,
1%.
Loretta?
The offset is the environmental protection of the property.
Are my eyes reading this correctly, that the three other properties that are outlined on this map are all town of Brookhaven?
Correct.
So this would be this, what about up in the Park Plaza, is that also town of Brookhaven?
Correct.
So this would be the only county parcel in this area?
In this immediate area,
In this
yes.
immediate area.
But again, we have something where the community in and of itself, the county has a project to the floodplain projects and things like that.
But if all of a sudden people decided to use this as a dump site, it would be the county's responsibility to clean it up, because it would be the county's property.
I get it, but
And what liability does the county have if somebody walks on the property? Say, oh, this is county-owned property, I can go anytime I want.
Or
They walk
child
and they
falls
fall
into
down
the
and break a
lake.
yeah,
leg.
but you get that on a road also. The county owns so much property.
That
They-
would be like any other property the county owns.
They haven't gone to the town of Brookhaven? I don't understand why they haven't approached them.
I don't know. That was another suggestion.
I have a
But
question. Any
This is
previous
is
development on
actually-
this site?
Hmm?
Any previous development on this site? You go back and do a historical?
We did, to the extent that I did, we didn't see anything.
Under the red line, it looks like there's a structure. Is that just adjacent to?
I think that's just a, I don't think it is a structure. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think it's probably related to the property adjacent to it. And
on
I
this
know
line.
that
That's just a tree,
No,
probably.
no, that's like a shed or something.
It looks square. Loretta, knock it down if it's a shed.
okay.
I question the appropriateness
It's
of
more
the county
liability.
accepting this. I think that because the parcels that
came
are
up
in
as
the
something
area
for us to
are
buy,
town of
so-
Brookhaven, and if these people
Yeah.
want the tax write-off and they want to donate the property, I think they should donate it to the town of Brookhaven.
I agree.
That's outside of our purview, though. We're assessing a donation being made to the county.
Right, and I'm
That
saying
was-
I think we should not accept it.
I agree.
Brookhaven has two parks over there. One is Osprey Park,
Yes.
not too
At the
far
other
from there, and the
east
other
end.
is the marina. So they're over there all the time monitoring.
You know,
Yeah.
we also could
We-
frankly transfer it to the town of Brookhaven at a later time. I mean, we do land swaps.
This was put in by Legislator Browning. This wasn't reviewed internally initially, so Legislator Browning is the sponsor of this, and I would direct any questions to her in your concerns in regard to this.
I think we're getting a little far afield in trying to assess, if there's going to be dumping on the property or whether it's appropriate or not to take it. That becomes a political question, if nothing else. That's really outside of our purview. We're being asked to. It's donations, so it's not costing us anything. If it was costing us something, maybe I could see bootstrapping onto that one. But it's not costing us anything. It's got an environmental impact because we're taking it. We're preserving something in the littoral zone. I don't see the negatives to any of this. And again, we can make a suggestion that we can make a recommendation that the town maybe take it over. But we have these kinds of projects all over the place where there's one thing next to another, and the county does, in the overall perspective, have a project going on over here. I just don't see the problem.
I would agree that probably these are not environmental concerns, and it may be outside our purview for me to raise these issues. But as a rule of thumb, I think that accepting gifts is not often scrutinized enough. I think people are far too willing to say, oh yes, we will accept that gift. And just the fact that it comes off the tax rolls is one reason to look at it, maybe not in this, and that's where I'm agreeing with you. Maybe that's not our purview. But
that's a legislative question.
That's what I'm saying.
I know, I get it.
Mary Ann, I just want to add in that we do review, when we are asked to review these, we would make recommendations such as you've proposed.
And ETRB reviews this stuff also, if I'm not mistaken.
No, they do
not
not
on this one?
review donations.
I have a question already. You went on site, did dumping on this site or
No,
anything?
I haven't gone there recently, but I was there. I was down that area about a year or so ago, but I'd have to go out and double check.
Because a lot of time adjacent homeowners think that vacant parcel is their dumping ground.
Well, like any other parcel that the county owns, honestly.
Jim, it happens.
Jim, it's
not a reason to say no.
And another concern from that an environmental point of view, but the reason I raised the question of previous development is I used to live in Miller Place, and the county owned the park next door, and they had a whole hotel chain and everything else in there. I was in there one day in the woods, and I saw this nice hole in the ground with leaves on the top, thinking, oh, wow, what's that? So I poked a stick, and it was a former cesspool that went down 10 feet, and if some kid jumped in there, they would have drowned. So this is not necessarily an environmental, but it's a liability issue for the county that they should check these types of things out, because kids push the lids off old cesspools,
Jim,
all kinds of stuff.
There's another question though. This is identified as a county conservation area. Is there a county plan that applies to this? And I would address this to Loretta also. Is there a county plan talking about trying to preserve land in this area?
Yes, this is part of the Mastic Shirley Conservation Area that we identified. This is the northern limit of it. Anything within, that included wetlands or within a couple hundred feet of the shoreline were included within the peninsula of Mastic Shirley as part of the conservation area.
So this is identified as something within a county master plan.
I understand. And these are just a lot of issues. Some of them are not environmental, and they could deal with liability of the county in the future.
But that can happen any place, Jim. I mean, they just bought, the county a couple years ago bought 25 acres in...
The issues were raised is for real estate to entertain these things if they see.
Actually, parks.
Michael, you're going to make a motion?
Can I make a motion?
All right, I will make a motion. Unlisted negative declaration. Watch out for cesspools. And basically check the property, make sure there's nothing on it.
Are you going to want to qualify the letter? And then there's the recommendation under secret was unlisted negative declaration. Now, as a council, want to recommend that maybe because the town of Brookhaven owns properties in the area, that the county look
to see if they can consolidate.
Possibly, if the town would like it, because the county doesn't have really, facilities in the area to actively manage.
Yeah, but it is within the county's It's something that should be looked into. That would be part of my motion.
I would make a recommendation that the property be checked prior to acquisition.
I'd hate to
Make
see a
sure
house get
not dumping and
I don't
some
think
other
it can.
stuff.
Well, the phase one's gonna have to be done.
I'll second that, Jim.
One day, I don't even know what they're gonna do.
Right.
No, I understand. I'm just saying those could put in, not just hold up the process just for consideration.
Looks like the lot next to it's empty. Somebody's wanting.
All right, so we have unlisted neg deck, seconded here. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved, disapproved? Okay. Abstentions? All right. Motion passes.
Thank you. The next item on your agenda is the Baravarian property. This is a 0.2 acre parcel, part of a subdivision that has been preliminarily approved by the town of Huntington. The subdivision takes in both two lots, which is the lot that the piece in red is outlined on, as well as the lot to the west. It is they are proposing to create a 3-lot subdivision with this cutout for open space preservation purposes. They would like to donate this parcel to the county. The county owns the county owns the property to the east, known as the Benjamin property or the VA Veterans County Park. There are also town and county owned properties within this vicinity as well.
Yeah, that was up
So, is it their notion to donate this strip to the county or to the town?
To the county.
Or to be joined with the county-owned,
Correct.
town-owned property next
Yes.
door?
Yeah, we got a ton of
Exactly.
property.
So it all becomes, that's the
County-owned.
Benjamin
Contiguous.
property.
Yes,
that
the
is-
Benjamin, right, exactly.
That was, actually is behind the
Yeah,
school.
this is, right, and this
up
is
at
the
the top of
piece
the hill.
that is owned just solely by the county. There were other pieces of it that were acquired with town and county.
Well,
monies,
it was
but this
bought
one-
it was bought from the VA.
Right.
It was originally 82 acres.
Further north.
Yeah, I mean, this sets up with
Further
county
west.
land.
West, east, actually.
Okay,
East
motion?
of this property.
All right, motion, unlisted neg deck.
Second? Okay. Those in favor? Opposed? Abstention? Okay. Next thing on the agenda is the proposed acquisition of land by the County of Suffolk. 75% in town of Brookhaven, 25% Old Church, New Hope Revival Church property.
This property is 12.6 acres in size in the hamlet of Brookhaven, town of Brookhaven. It's south of Sunrise Highway, north of Montauk Highway, just off of Old Horse Block Road. It's a wooded, primarily oak, pine habitat. It's near to, just south of here is the Wertheim National Wildlife Refuge that's identified on your map in orange. Although it's not contiguous, it's certainly within the watershed of the creek is Yaphank Creek. This is a tributary to Carmen's River to the east. And it flows southeast, in a southeasterly direction towards Carmen's River here in this. It's part of the Carmen's River watershed, and we're looking to acquire this with the town of Brookhaven in a 75-25% acquisition.
Greta, on the property just to the east of it, looks like there's a lot of disturbance. What is over there?
That's like a nursery. I don't know if it's in production at this point. I couldn't say.
Looks like a tree farm.
There's some other residential uses as well. but that larger piece is either a nursery or former nursery.
This is inside the core? I'm trying to read which way the
No,
map
it's
goes.
not in the core, it's just outside the core. The boundary of the core is just to the south.
This way.
Not that way.
Mm. You can see it on the map.
It's
No, but I couldn't see
identified
which
on
way it
the,
went.
actually in a green and white.
Yeah, but I couldn't tell whether that meant the north was the core or the south was the
The
I
core.
don't have my glasses and I could see it.
Yeah.
Here you go, Rich.
Unlisted type 2. Unlisted neg
Neg
deck.
deck.
I'm sorry.
Second.
I'm getting punchy here, guys.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, one more.
Those in favor?
Oi.
Opposed? Abstentions? Measure passes.
Thank you. The next one before you is proposed acquisition known as Heritage Square Builders property in East Mauritius, town of Brookhaven. This is a 51.56 acre lot. It consists of 2 parcels, one in the compatible growth area and one south of the compatible growth area. It's bisected by County Route 91, which was a former right-of-way, railroad right-of-way. I did walk this last week, and it's still actually a walkable trail that you can utilize to access this property. We are buying this on our own. However, the town of Brookhaven has acquired the Oaks at East Mauritius to the west, which is about approximately another 50 acres that they own and will be managing as well. There is a proposal that a proposed resolution by the town of Brookhaven to also manage this property on behalf of the county, along with their properties to the west. And
So you like the project?
yes, actually, it's a nice wooded piece of property. It's a mature pine oak habitat. We did see ferns and some other native species that are protected by New York State on the property as well.
Find any sewage tunnels?
No.
What are those? Are those like cutouts? What are they separate?
There is some encroachment.
Second. Okay, all those in favor, unlisted action, negative declaration.
Who was the motion?
Opposed, unlisted action, negative
Who made the motion?
declaration.
Rich.
And who seconded?
I did.
And opposed, abstention. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Michael, on the other business? You wanna explain?
Yeah, in the EMB the other day, there was a notice that, environmental notice bulletin. There was a notice that the state is updating Title VI of the rules and regs, the SEQA regulations, expanding definitions, requiring scoping for all EISs now, encouraging green design and green building. I included the notice in your folders here, and they're actually putting it out. They're going to do an EIS on it more as a public information process than evaluating the impacts of these changes. So they sent out a scoping document, which is in your packets. They're accepting comments up until August 10th. I'm starting to put together a letter of comment.
Is this document?
Yep.
I can't read it, so.
Well, you got time.
Mike's got his glasses over there if you want
If
them.
you guys want to go through it and get me any comments you guys might have, let's say by August 1st, I'll compile everything together and send a letter out on behalf of the council to the DEC with our comments.
Does green infrastructure include green methodologies like for parking, etc.?
There is something in here about parking, size of parking lots.
Well, I'm kind of referring to, like permeable surfaces and
That
drains
I
and-
don't know. I'd have to look again.
It should, it would imply, the word it implies that.
I'd have to look through here, but they're expanding the type 1 and type 2 list, clarifying things, putting incentives in there for green building. But you'll see, they outline it pretty clearly in their scoping document. And if you guys think there's something else that should be added, something that should be taken out, by all means, let me know and I'll include that with our comment letter.
Yeah, I got one problem.
So we're going to say August 1st, that's all right?
Yes.
You can email them to me or Christine.
Any other comments? Anything else on the agenda? The public have some comments?
Thank you.
No sewer tunnels.
Yeah, sorry. Gee, you're no fun.
So what would you prefer they do?
My name is Mark Saratoff. I'm part of the executive board of the Town Line Civic Association, and we have 11,000 families representing Comac, Kings Park, Fort Salonga, East Northport, and we're very concerned about a declaration of a memorandum that the Planning Commission voted for April 4th regarding the 84-acre Carlson property in Smithtown. That's a triangular piece demarcated by being set just adjacent to and south of the Long Island Railroad right-of-way. The western border is Town Line Road. Across the street is the Huntington Incinerator. The southern border is Old Northport Road. And the eastern border is the Saginaw Coast Parkway. The area is surrounded within 5 miles by tens of thousands of homes, over 100 schools, the VA hospital, St. Catherine's, and the Planning Commission on April 4th voted to approve a rezoning of the property, that property in question, from light industrial to heavy industrial and wholesale. And I think that when they voted, not all the facts or concerns or issues were brought to light, and these were brought to light by the Smithtown Planning Commission. I have this document from the memorandum from the Smithtown Planning Commission, Frank Rubius chairman, and there are 8 serious concerns and issues about this property going from light industrial to heavy industrial. And I'll leave that to you to read. Should I read them or leave it to you? They're bullet points.
That's fine, if you want to leave them.
Well, the roads, the highlights are the roads are very congested, narrow, twisting and winding, and were never designed for more heavy truck traffic and tanker traffic, construction traffic, tractor-trailer traffic. The roads are traversed by school buses and residents, and heavy industrial will add to the congestion and danger. The tax base would be lowered for the town because heavy industrial is the lowest taxed of the industrial uses. The residents find that the existing uses are already obnoxious, and heavy industrial can bring other uses like auto dismantling, like Gershow, a power plant, bulk storage oil facility, cement manufacture, rock crushing, asphalt factory. That's all industrial uses, and the town recommends against that. Meanwhile, the Planning Commission voted to change it to heavy industrial. Perhaps the most, and I'll leave this for you, perhaps the most significant is the area in question is over a deep recharge aquifer protection, Suffolk County Protection Zone. I queried this from the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, and I make my reading glasses like this, so I left them home. Kenneth Clooney, the Assistant Public Health Engineer of the Suffolk County Health Department Services, confirms that the parcel is over an aquifer deep recharge zone, and I'll leave this document for you. One of the proposed uses of the parcel is a major power plant, and here's the proposal submitted to LIPA by Competitive Power Ventures, and I'll leave that for you also. It's from Silver Springs, Maryland, 400 megawatts, mainly fed by the Iroquois gas natural gas pipeline, but also in order to fulfill the requirements of the LIPA RFP, they need to store at least 500,000 gallons of number 2 fuel oil as backup fuel for an uninterruptible power supply. And that will be over the Suffolk County Deep Recharge Aquifer Protection Zone. That bulk storage now is allowed over taking supersedence of Suffolk County Article 7 to protect the Deep Recharge Zone. The Suffolk County Department of Health states that in 2009, if a facility stores over 400,000 gallons or more of petroleum and is classified as a major oil storage facility by the New York State Navigation Law, Suffolk County is preempted from enforcing Article 7 and Article 12 of the Suffolk County Sanitary Code for sites that are classified as major storage oil facilities. So our law to protect the aquifer will be superseded, and they will be allowed to store over 400,000 gallons of hazardous chemicals over the deep recharge zone. So this is all in with regards to the Planning Commission approving changes to this property. And can the CEQ request a revote or a revisit of that rezoning of Carlson? That's what I bring before you.
Basically, the council's jurisdiction is review of county-initiated projects and activities, and their responsibility is to make recommendations to the legislature and the county executive with respect to what is required under SECRA, an environmental review process. Now, so we don't have any jurisdiction with respect to the Suffolk County Planning Commission per se. Did you attend the Planning Commission and present all this information?
Yes.
Now, was this project referred to the Planning Commission by the town? Usually the town has the final say.
The town presented it before the Planning Commission, but before the input of the Smithtown Planning Board and the concerns issued.
Well, but the town has the final say. The Planning Commission is advisory to the town.
It's the town board that has
it goes
the final
back
say.
to the town board. So you should be attending really the town board meetings and the town planning commissions and requesting that you want a full environmental review. You want to have all of these alternatives reviewed, all of the options reviewed under SECRA. You want a full environmental impact statement to be presented. You want the public the chance to comment before any rezoning takes place. And that happens at the town level, not the county level.
And they're required to do an environmental review of the zone
change. As a matter of
change.
fact, the SECRA recommendation was one of the items recommended by Frank DeRubius, the Smithtown Planning Board.
Yeah, but what did Russ say?
Barnett?
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay, Russ runs the EIS and the secret stuff for the.
Yeah, but the town planning board would be the people that conduct the secret process. Yeah.
Well,
like
no.
We're doing it for the county today with respect to the outfall.
So even though you're part of the planning commission,
we're not part.
No, we're not part. We're
Totally separate
advisory.
agency.
The planning commission deals with private projects and the towns and regional development. We deal with county-initiated projects. So we have separate jurisdictions that way.
Do you have any concerns about Article 7 protecting the deep recharge aquifer protection zone? Do you have any concerns about that?
Yeah, we do.
Do you take any actions to protect it in
Now,
light of what?
if we're preempted, we're preempted. We don't have the authority to strike out on our own.
But I mean, also, we would only review it if it's a proposed county-initiated action. Like, as was mentioned today on the sewer outfall pipe, they're going to have to store diesel fuel on the site. As part of our review, I mean, whatever the council recommends, they're going to have to adhere to Article 7 of the Suffolk County Sanitary Code for storage, and protection in those areas. I mean, but that's a county-initiated project. This is a town project, really.
As I told you before, though, you have to hit it on secret grounds. If you want to oppose this, any zone change, especially one this large, given that it's on an SGPA, you can demand, I don't know if the town board will go along with it, but you can demand a full EIS be done.
Yes.
And especially, and you've got to, it's on an SGPA. You don't know what's going to be coming out of there. Also, as I told you before, the master plan of Smithtown is a 1953 document. It has not been fully updated. There's been moves towards it. You can take advantage of that by saying this is a piecemeal rezoning. And you've got a lot of legal avenues to attack this on, because piecemeal zoning, for example, is heavily frowned upon. And Smithtown's the classic. That's all we do. I live in Smithtown, obviously.
Jim, just kind of for the council's information, if you, for members that are kind of don't already are aware of this, I was speaking to Frank Rubis the other day, not on this particular parcel in particular, but just the general tenor, and it just seems that nowadays the planning commission is really kind of focused totally on economic development and blind to some other issues, as well as the Smithtown Town Board. So I can understand the gentleman's quandary here, and the more help you give him in addressing the problem on a legal basis, I think the better.
I mean, in addition, what we mentioned today, the secret process, as I said, is a public informational process. You have a whole bunch of homeowners that are in this area, and if a good number of homeowners write to town and say they want impact statements, they want a full environmental review, they want this, you live in the town of Smithtown, and under secret you have to do it, they'll probably have to do an impact statement.
You have standing.
You have
what
standing.
it boils down to complain. But to put it very bluntly, if you want to do something about this, you have to get your association, everybody's got to drop a letter. Everyone's got to drop a letter. Vecchio and the others will respond to something like that if they know there's enough stuff out there.
To demand a secret.
Yes, because
demand is
publicly stating what you're saying to us, to the town board, is important. So it's on the record, so that if it, it comes down to a lawsuit.
I have, yes, sir.
So if it comes down to a lawsuit, you can say, well, they knew about it, or they know about it, because we brought it to their attention.
One of the triggers for requiring an environmental impact statement is public controversy. So if enough people write in, that's a trigger.
And also there's a fairly low threshold to requiring an impact statement.
But you got to go.
If it may, the word may is in there, if it may produce an environmental impact, an impact statement is required.
Right.
So you can use that language to your advantage.
Another tool is a petition with signatures, a very short paragraph written petition. If you're having trouble getting letters, and you go and hand the copies out and go door to door and get people to sign the petition, because numbers do make a difference when you have signatures. Not everybody wants to write a letter or can write a letter or whatever, but a petition just needs a signature.
Didn't the truck turn over on that corner?
There was a fatal accident at the intersection of Pulaski and Town Line. A truck lost its brakes and toppled over into a lady's station wagon, killing her.
Yeah. That was a garbage truck, right?
Yes.
What it boils down to is Smithtown will react. If you pack up the meeting enough with your people and just start talking to them all the time, the referral that was made to the County Planning Commission, they'll listen. I mean, the town board has to take this into account. And you guys get, public portion over there, 3 minutes, and just hit the high points and say, you want an EIS, you want an EIS, you want an EIS.
I mentioned this issue to Dr. William Spencer, Suffolk legislator for the Huntington Centerport area, whose constituents will also be affected in East Northport. He's on board. As a matter of fact, he wrote a letter opposing this on the grounds of storing, that I'll give you two, that storing bulk storage of hazardous chemicals over the aquifer. He said he's charged of energy environment, Suffolk County.
Yeah, but he doesn't have jurisdiction. That's the problem. He can make a lot of noise.
Yeah,
he does not have jurisdiction.
He will hold hearings if necessary.
Well,
and it doesn't scare the town of Smithtown.
At all those hearings, you should have people signing the petitions, and you read the petition into the minutes at the hearings. Because that's really critical, and you tell them how many signatures you've got.
Yeah.
You
You
might
have
be
to
able
hit
to
the
get
town
some
board.
support from the Huntington Planning Board.
Yes.
The chairman of the Huntington Planning Board lives literally across the street to the north.
Fort Salonga.
Yeah.
You-
Fort Salonga.
A person mentioned an interesting scenario. It's adjacent and south of the Long Island Railroad right-of-way. What if there's a derailment and a locomotive or train goes into the oil tank or power plant or something?
Yeah, but that's 83 acres. That's a little far-fetched unless they store it right next to the thing. You also have one other problem. There's a power plant there right now, Covanta.
It's not a power plant. It's
It gives off electricity. How many
it's
megawatts?
trivial. It's 50 megawatts. It's trivial.
Larry, is that the right number?
No, I'm sorry. I think it's about a dozen
Waste energy.
megawatts.
It's a fair amount. It's not that low in terms of megawatts.
Yeah,
it's somewhat higher.
Yeah, that's a very common misconception that these incinerators are energy plants. That's a minuscule byproduct of burning the waste.
I think they largely just power their own facility.
Yeah, it's about a dozen megawatts. It's trivial.
No. You've gone from 50 down to a dozen. I think it's more than that.
I was thinking of Covanta off the
In
Meadowbrook.
Yeah, that's a huge.
That's about 50 megawatts.
I think it's larger than that, but regardless, I'm just saying you have a road to hoe on that one. That's
Do
a
they, do
problem.
they still have the gas turbine there?
No.
That's gone.
The what from the waste landfill?
Yeah.
That's gone.
All right.
But thank you for your input.
If you leave that with us, I'll have Michael send it to the Planning Commission, so this was submitted and there's concerns over the environmental review, and that you've been advised to contact the town of Smithtown with your concerns relative to secret.
Thank you.
Who made the referral, by the way, to the Planning Commission? Was it the town?
500 feet probably of the town line.
It's probably either within 500 feet
Yeah, but
of the town line or
there-
county road.
Here's the
who made it?
Here's
Okay.
I don't know how to translate these things. That's the actual document from the Planning Commission.
It's a referral from the town. Okay, you got nailed by something.
Where did you get that?
Referral from the town.
Yeah, the town gets the application, the town refers it to the planning commission if it meets certain thresholds, like
Yeah, but who
by
made
county
the
road, within 500 feet of the town line.
Yeah, see, what I'm bringing out is, you're talking about the town planning board, run by Frank.
Yes.
That's separate from the town board, okay?
Yes.
The town board may have made the submission.
Yeah, don't
Okay,
the
that
town boards have
indicates
to
that there's
rotate?
issues
Not the planning?
that they are trying to stack it in certain ways. What I'm saying is just flop it to the
Yes.
town board.
You should make your letter to the town board, because I think the town board has a responsibility for zone change, not
Yeah.
the planning board.
Yeah.
Town board
But
votes on it, yes.
there's a split in the town
Final.
of Smithtown. That's really what's
No,
going
but I'm
on.
saying the letter should go to the town board with a CC to Derubius and the planning commission, saying you were requiring impact statements and everything else to be done. Because then he could take that, if he's not totally in favor of the project, and say, look, you got to do an impact statement, you have to proceed.
Another issue someone else raised is now that this New York State navigation law preempts Article 7 over 400,000 gallons of bulk oil storage, you could set a precedent throughout the county with many more of these.
Are you sure it's the NAB law? Because the NAB law generally covers the seacoast. It doesn't go in that
I'll
far.
give you the statement from, somebody has it, Suffolk County Health Department.
Richie, where'd it go?
Where's the letters
Is
go?
that it over there? No?
I had it over here.
The NAB law
He
isn't
had it in
supposed to
that
apply
pile
inland.
of stuff. What happened to the pile of stuff?
Did Michael Pitcher
He
just
was
leave
putting
the
it. You have it. Yeah.
I took it myself.
You took it back. There you go.
The other thing you need to do is get the press in
Somebody
there.
make a motion.
Yes.
That's really
Make a
critical.
motion.
Jim,
Yeah.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, I'd like to have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a
Second.
second? All those in favor? Okay, opposed? All right, we're adjourned.
All right. Anytime.
I'll see you folks next month.